Hey there, welcome to this fully narrated real-time tutorial. In this session, we're going to be doing some actual sketching where we focus on drawing this scene that you can see here. I'm not going to worry too much about doing a two-stage process on cleaning everything up. I'm going to focus on one thing. That's coming up with an idea and trying to get it down on the page as soon as possible to see what it's like. Alright, let's jump in, get started. Just quickly, my name's Tim McBurney. I've been a professional working artist for 20 years and I'm here on this channel, the Drawing Codex, to help you embrace the challenge of drawing and to master the craft of line and color illustration, and to do what I'm going to be doing here, which is draw some weird little scene from my imagination and try and just get the ideas flowing to see what they look like. If you're interested in this type of line and color style, where we create worlds with simple line and color, go check out my free quick start guide. It goes over all of the tools and techniques that I use to create this type of work. Now, this is not going to be a fast-paced, quickly edited YouTube video with a whole bunch of jokes. This is just how it is actually done in my experience. Creating art takes patience and time. Let's jump in, get started. Okay, so I did a little bit of quick sketching just to kind of have an idea, and I came up with this little idea or scene, and you can think of this as a literal sort of thumbnail little session, right? I've just got an idea. It's going to be some kind of fantasy creature flying on this weird kind of whale thing that's flying in the sky, and again, there's not a lot of plan besides that, just besides trying to see, where this goes and what it looks like. So I'm going to take the sketch that I had and just reduce it down in opacity and just kind of leave it there, because it does give us a pretty good indication of what I want to see. Now we've got a couple of things in the background. We're going to have a couple of different levels and layers that we're dealing with. We're going to have some clouds in the foreground. We're going to have the character in the midground, and again, a couple of other little flying creatures in there as well. I'm going to focus firstly on drawing this main character. And I'm going to do something a little bit different to what I normally do. Normally I would start with two kind of phases to the process where we kind of, use a bigger brush to kind of block things in. In this instance, I'm gonna just kind of start going at it with this kind of thick to thin sketching tool. And this allows me to do something that, the other brushes that I sometimes use don't, which is kind of just very lightly put in some construction lines, and then kind of as we go, right, I can make them sort of thicker and thicker and kind of add rendering. I find this helps me sometimes, with a sketchier kind of look, because I can quite loosely and easily sit here and construct and sort of think about where these things are. And, I'm not making any major crazy marks or anything like that to begin with. So that's something I have sort of been playing around with, and I've sort of found it to be pretty useful. So again, just got kind of this kind of flowy line here. And yeah, where is this in space? I feel like, yeah, maybe we'll just kind of have it like this. So sometimes I talk about sketching, even if I am working with a fairly clean style. In this case, I'm sketching as well. I have a little bit more of a, sketchy style. In either case, I think it's really just about going in with a plan versus, without a plan. I think, sketching is more where we're just experimenting, not worrying too much, but, sometimes that can be clean. Sometimes that can be messy. The thing that I'm going to try and focus on here is just getting this idea happening and just sort of seeing how little we can get away with in terms of, pre-drawing and figuring all of that stuff out. So we're sort of still playing around with what kind of character this is. Alright, got a little sort of torso here. Again, I want it to try and be as like a sort of a relatively fun idea. So try and make everyone kind of sort of happy. Again, some sort of little goblin character, which is often what I like to do. Some sort of hair. About these eyes. Again, some kind of chin. I might revisit this in a minute, see whether it's actually gonna, have the right amount of appeal and interest, etc. Got an arm here, arm there. So again, we can be loose, rough. Think about, if we're just kind of sketching some, pencil. I think I want to make that face a little bit cuter. So kind of move those features down a bit. Move those eyes there a bit. See how we go. And get some ears. Nose. And again, maybe push this up a bit. Get that shape working a bit better. So I feel like, again, I don't want to make these, I want to make this body not too big. just so he feels a little bit sort of cuter. Alright, and yeah, what's happening with this whale guy? Give him some little sort of scaly nubs and things, just for a bit of interest. See if we can sort of logically attach some kind of strap along there. Maybe give him little goblin fangs or something. So again, can be really useful here to just make sure I've got that. Yep, that is on its correct layer. Just hide everything, right? Just put it up so we can sort of see it big. See what happens, right? We've got this kind of saddle that he's got. Still not convinced about those eyes and stuff. Just might be a bit big. Oh, might just be a little bit too much structure there, right? Again, also might just need a bit more. Bit more structure for the hair. Can see we're working through some of these details, you know, starting to add stuff. Get all of these bits and pieces working and kind of synced up. Right. Oh, yeah, probably need some travel bags there. A few things kind of flying off. So again, we've got this waist here. Again, maybe it's got a few things. See if we can clear that up a bit. So maybe we could have some little kind of handles to hang on to here. And yeah, let's imagine what's happening behind there with that structure. Yeah, I feel like that's gonna work a little bit more. So again, super sketchy. But sometimes, you know, like ideas are not worth putting in heaps of time, right? I feel like if you can get the time down to where you can explore things at a certain pace, all of a sudden you kind of open yourselves up. You open yourself up to being able to explore, because you don't have that hesitancy. You know, if I'm thinking about trying to create something that's like, again, you know, going to take me even if it's still quick, you know, if it's like, you know, 3 or 4 hours, you know, to do a big scene or something like that. You know, if you worry too much about the finish, it can really torpedo your, you know, ability to just kind of throw some stuff together, right? And kind of just see what it looks like, you know, like, what about this? What about this? So yeah, that's sort of the idea with this sort of technique. Just be a bit bit less. It's less about structure, you know. It's like, do these wings make sense? No, but you know, can we make them make sense? Yeah, sure. You know, they don't have to make sense right now. We don't have to get everything to kind of overlap. And again, so much of this type of work is about understanding your intent going in, you know, knowing like, do we need higher level of detail? Do we need polish? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? You know, allows you to, you know, be a lot freer when you have that intent fully sorted. So again, you can go in here. I feel like to a certain degree the face does need to kind of anchor and be good. You know, it needs to have the right sort of emotion or whatever. Right? I need to look at it and sort of have a certain amount of, that seems fun, you know. So that's why, again, I'm sort of focusing a little bit more on this. That's probably what most people are gonna look for. So what's happening here? Good to sort that out. This thing going here. Alright, maybe a few other little bits of hair and stuff. Try to create an interesting shape. There we go. Now this is the kind of drawing where I'm like, oh, do we flip it? If we flip it, I reckon it's not going to look very good. I think we're going to see problems. Yeah, and you know, mostly here, I feel like just the face is looking a little bit two-dimensional. Right, you probably could sort of shift so it's not, so there's a little bit more sort of cheek there. Right, it's looking a bit silly, but I mean, you know, the rest of it's kind of okay. Boom. Alright. Certainly with me, you know, despite all the stuff I prattle on about and teach, it is very easy for me to get, you know, locked into the structure of things, and just lose that kind of feeling of like, hey, let's just draw something and see what happens, you know. Alright, so that's that guy. That's done enough. Again, there's a little stuff we could play around with, but you know, like you could spend an extra 10 minutes fiddling around with, you know, making sure a lot of that sort of stuff, you know, worked, or, you know, like we got the draw through and all that stuff. Who cares? Alright, let's make a new layer. On this new layer, I'm going to have clouds. And I'm going to put heaps of effort into these clouds, as you can see. Boom. And I think on this layer as well, it'd be good to have, again, we got this little kind of creature here. So again, might be good to see if we can get another version of it, right? Like it's kind of a similar kind of thing. Just it's looking a bit boring from a shape design perspective. Right, maybe it's a bit more like this. I mean, it's not very interesting either. Give it a texture up top. Well, like, does that make sense from a structural standpoint? Alright, we kind of get this. See if we can make them line up a bit more. Again, not that that makes sense. I think the other thing I'll do is just see if I can give it a bit of that kind of wobble, right? So it's, again, this is where, you know, I'm less focusing on trying to get it looking triangular, more on, oh, if we just make a cool line, you know, maybe that'll kind of work. Put a few more kind of tentacle things. I don't know. We will see what it looks like. And so over here we got one of the same kind of guys or gals or things. Bit of that sort of texture there. So again, the tricky to, we'll be able to figure out the scale of them later, right? I feel like that's a bit tricky at the moment. Right, so again, let's still not get too caught up in yeah, you know, it's still good to construct. Don't get too caught up in trying to make these sort of clean lines. I feel like it's often, you know, even though we might end up with a bit of mess there. Right. Good to kind of, you know, still construct stuff out. Now again, I'm sort of aware that, like, you know, this bump here is in a different spot to these bumps there, but that's the kind of thing that I'm probably not going to care about too much in this one. All right, so very, very shaky. Now they're on the same layer there. These two here, oh, I think these need to be Control-Shift-J on a separate layer, and then behind we'll have some other clouds. And this is where, again, I'm just going to it's a bad tangent. That might be a better tangent. So again, we sort of got like a field of clouds, right? I guess this one and this one in the background there are kind of on the same level. So again, the clouds here, not something I'm claiming to be an amazing sort of drawing or anything like that. Let's make one last cloud. All right, sort of layer or something. See, again, sometimes with these ones, you know, find, you know, sometimes we use them, sometimes we don't. Either way, you know, it's good to have something in the background. Again, you know, there might be something sort of in the distance there. Again, all of that will be pretty faded out. Little horizon liney sort of clouds or something over there. Yeah, anyway, is that all? Yeah, that's one layer. Let's see if we can add a bit more depth to these. So again, you know, these are 2-minute clouds, right? It's like not going to change the world. But as I said, they'll probably be pretty far in the background. All right, so let's, there we've got that. Got that. So yeah, let's go through. And one thing you can do, you know, is, you know, put a levels layer to kind of knock this stuff out, but don't really, you know, it's not going to be the end of the world. Go through, and that allows us to finesse this selection a little bit, right? Like get rid of some of those sketchy lines. We add a tiny bit more work here, you know, by leaving those sketchy lines in there, but I think overall it's a good trade-off. All right, going to run an action on that. We'll create some flat color behind that. Boom, let's take this. Let's take this. Let's make it, yeah. So yeah, still need to get rid of some of that, I think. Cool, so we got that. Let's hide that. Let's do this one. Yeah. So again, just filling in, making choices about, you know, where we want that those flats to be. As I always say, if you're not quite sure how to utilize the good and ever better selection and masking sort of tools in Photoshop, you can always just paint this in, you know, just as a flat layer. That's a really good solution as well. But, you know, one of the reasons I do think Photoshop is still a really, really good option is that, you know, for line and color style, where, you know, there's a lot of other options, I guess, like Clip Studio, you know, obviously Procreate if you're on iPad. You know, the masking stuff in Photoshop is really, really good because obviously, you know, a big part of Photoshop is photographic masking, right? And I've noticed that the ability for the magic wand and all those automatic selection tools and stuff to handle this kind of stuff has gotten better over time, you know. And I think it'll just get better and better. So you can kind of count on Adobe, I think, anyway. Again, I don't do a lot of photographic stuff, but my thought would be Adobe's going to be ahead in that for a long time. You know, that's kind of their bread and butter. They've kind of got to make that good. Yeah, and I have found, again, it's another good thing about Photoshop is that even though it's not meant for digital art, really, you can always use all the tools on everything, and you know that's kind of why I still use it, because even though these things that I'm doing here don't have a lot of basis in, again, they're not designed for an artistic workflow. If you can kind of think of how you can use a tool in Photoshop to your advantage, right? So the workflow I'm kind of using is obviously a lot more janky than kind of, you know, some of the modern comic book specific programs allow you to sort of, you know, just drag and drop colors in. But, you know, this gives me a lot of control of that process, you know, at a fairly high level of fidelity. And again, you know, that's just because Photoshop kind of, you know, works how it works. And if you can kind of think of how to adapt those tools that, you know, are meant for photography to a digital art process, then it, you know, it often surprises you with the, you know, how sort of powerful it can be. So we're running with a very, very basic, you know, foreground, middle ground, background logic. I'm hoping that simple value arrangement and compositional tool will, you know, come in handy and make things sort of simple. We'll think about how we can get the colors sort of working to our advantage as well. Cool. All right, last one. So as you can see, you know, we're sort of half an hour into this, maybe a little bit less. And yeah, we sort of got a lot of this stuff. Turn it all back on. Got a lot of this stuff kind of going. And it's all there. Yeah, I'll leave that. So I'm going to start with the most basic sort of assumption. This is something that, you know, I sort of have done in the past. Again, there's a large variety of ways you can render stuff, etc. If you're really sort of strapped for time and you're not sort of sitting there looking to, you know, looking to make it sort of super highly polished, what we can do is, again, there's a few of these gradients here. I forget where these came from, but yeah, there's a couple there that I kind of really like. They have like a really nice range of sort of colors, and again, what I often like to do is just kind of use something like that as a base. So that's obviously at low opacity. Let's go full opacity. All right, so we sort of got something like that. And again, we could probably do that the opposite way, right? I mean, that's probably the smart money would be something like that, doing it the opposite way. And then again, we sort of got some pre-baked, you know, pre-baked kind of colors in here, and we can then kind of adjust them. Again, might be tricky to figure out, you know, exactly sort of what's going on here, but I've just got this one gradient, and I'm kind of copying it here and there, and again, just kind of reducing and increasing the opacity of it. And yeah, it kind of just allows me to get a base in there that I feel like kind of works. And again, it's got that sort of sunset look, which is sort of cool. Now again, that's obviously just a base, right? So obviously, again, that's just the first block in, right? And again, what I might do is just kind of merge down those gradients so they don't cause absolutely epic file size stuff. And then again, there's a lot of different ways to approach this. We could use a you know, like a real flat color sort of approach, and I might do that for the character, but it can also be a little bit easier to kind of just use a normal big brush for some of these. And what I want to do here is kind of, where, oh yeah, there we are, is get rid of some of this some of this gradientness, right? Make it a little bit more like, you know, there is some sort of thought or paint in there, maybe. Again, a lot of that will be faded out, so I don't have to worry too much about that. And we could, again, you know, work with some gradients here. But again, we'll play around with this, see what kind of happens. The trick is just not to kind of overwork it, right? Not to, you know, to think a little bit more iconically with some of these marks. If we start sort of painting too much, it's yeah, I think it's gonna, even that's probably a little bit much. All right, so now we got these. Now again, I always like to make this kind of thing kind of pretty, right, pretty red. So maybe it's kind of, again, that doesn't make any sense from an evolutionary sort of camouflage standpoint, but oh well. It's kind of fun nonetheless. And here we got this. And again, good to put a bit of rough stuff in there. So again, you know, this is not quite flat color, but it is just sort of simple color, right? We're not really, I'm not painting, I'm not, you know, I'm not going in there and adding any crazy effects or anything like that, and I'm not really rendering form with these marks. We're still kind of dealing with local color. So just, you know, what the color of the top of that little creature would be, what the color of the back would be, etc. Alright, let's see if we can kind of put this here now. If you do want to experiment with color, right, a really good option is to just do that as a separate layer. I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to sort of think about what is the color of this flying whale creature. And I'll put that on a separate layer, and I'll show you in a minute kind of how we can use that to our advantage. Again, I'm going to try and make it a little bit flatter. Alright. And down here, again, we'll kind of add this. Alright, and probably over the top, what we'll do is think about where we can find a nice sort of neutral to block in this character with. I'll use this to block in all of the, you know, the base layer of the character. And again, we're going to go for a basic idea is, you know, it's going to be the background is going to be lighter than the foreground stuff. Oh, yeah, this is just a base. I'm going to add a bit of stuff over the top. Alright, so essentially we can adjust the color of this to, you know, maybe make it a little bit, again, less blue. And as I said, we can easily adjust the color of that now, right? So you can kind of see how, right, how playing with those things can be helpful. Oh, and again, I kind of want like a, right, like a bit of a, like a green. Again, let's see if we can get this. So this is a, you know, we're very much dealing with sort of relative colors, right? Like what's going to look green, what's going to look blue, and I'm sort of blending these colors together a bit, trying to keep them sort of a little bit bright. To test, you know, just to make sure that we don't get too much darkness happening, right? Like darkness and muddiness, I guess, is sort of the end of this type of style, right? We want to sort of avoid that kind of thing. See if we can bring some of that red in here. Now again, you could do all of these things. I think actually that probably needs to be bleak. You could do all these things with it with a much simpler, flat color style like I normally do. Again, I'm just sort of showing this as an interesting option. Because again, it can be a little bit easier to sort of hide some things, and if you're not after that sort of high, really clean polish, we're probably not going to notice some of those, bits and pieces. So here I'm basically just going to play with darker than, right? Some of these things are going to be darker than others. And again, I do feel like there is a big advantage to just being very clear with your flat colors. Doing too much painting like this can be very tricky. I would actually say this is something you should consider to be more of an advanced skill, which might sound weird, but yeah, I do think that doing too much brushy, painty sort of stuff can be a bit challenging, right? Because you end up with mush very easily, right? So we'll see how this goes. Let's so again, I'll probably end up color adjusting some of this as we go. Again, I don't know why he's so blue. Kind of thought it might be a little bit cool, but it's again, it's sort of bringing it's bringing a lot of that, making those reds really, really vibrant. Yeah, which is sort of tricky, right? But yeah, again, we could just kind of move this around, right? See if maybe making that red helps. Zoop, zoop, pink. Yeah. Again, that sort of draws our attention to the middle, which is kind of cool. Now you can see it's sort of, it's torpedoed a lot of the right, the sort of work underneath. So probably need to go through and make some of that a little bit less blue. Yeah, and as well as that, right, get rid of some of these things. Boom. Yeah, I think that's cool. And what we can do here is, it's like, well, yeah, we kind of out of time for that. But the first thing I do is, okay, let's just progress through the series of events of things that I'm going to do anyway, which is basically to add a whole bunch of sort of, simple gradients where we just sort of move everything, further into the distance. Right, sort of like that. So yeah, these I have mentioned this before, but these big gradients can be super dangerous from a file size perspective, so do watch that. So let's pick a big airbrush, just see if we can start, right, fading some of this out. Now if you do want to just isolate these, we can just put another, we can clip another layer on there, right? And we can kind of, you know, make these things like a little bit more of a, right, of a little kind of silhouette in the distance. But again, I actually don't want them to appear too much in the distance because I want them to appear kind of small. So the idea is actually they're kind of, you know, they're kind of close to where he is. And what I'll do here, again, we can try that sort of gradient. All right, again there. See what that's like. Again, I feel like that's going to be a bit much. What we could do is, again, just try and sort of lock it to this character. Or we could also, again, another sort of nice trick is just to sort of go over the, let's get a nice cool, yeah, let's just sort of go over this character here. We'll keep the lines a bit thicker, but we'll just sort of, you know, create a little bit more sort of homogenization, right? Just sort of push those colors, right, so they don't feel too strong. So here again, I'm gonna go right over the top. This is now over the top of the lines, so it's gonna make that feel as if it's sort of more one big shape, which can be sort of useful. Problem here is you can see, again, we're sort of pushing everything down a bit. Everything's getting a little bit mushy. Boom, boom, which kind of ruins the cleanness of it all. So yeah, we might not want to do that. So yeah, same thing here for these. Might want to keep those. And just sort of keep, right, something like that. Now we could also see, you know, maybe if we make this, you know, really kind of bright, that might be an interesting kind of change as well. We could try right with this. Oh, let's try actually the hue saturation. Just bring it up. All right, give us that cloud sort of look. That might actually be more what we're looking for. Here we can go hue saturation as well. Just bring that up. That might work all right. And so I think that's kind of probably a little bit better of a of an idea. Let's keep that. And what we might do instead is, you know, try and sort of color some of these things. So we use an overlay, still with a big, right. Again, try and sort of push them. Make those colors pop a little bit more, because again, I think it's we're gonna want some drama. Thing here, new layer. All right, let's make these. Oh, that's a little bit pink. All right, make them even more pink. And again, we can play around with that. Get that sort of pink. See if we can add that there. That's probably going to be sort of too strong. But certainly adding, you know, adding gradients to these can be, you know, a good way to get some crazy effects. You know, we can play around with color there. I kind of like that. I sort of think that the simplicity of that is going to work a little bit better. And if we kind of pull it down, again, can we get a little bit of that sort of green back in there? So again, now we're playing very heavily with gradients and stuff. Something I'm going to try is put some sort of texture in here. So just sort of low opacity texture everywhere. Boom, boom, boom. And try doing the same thing here. Yeah, there we go. I think maybe I had something wrong selected before. So again, even as well, doing these big strokes is going to really pull that, to like stress your computer. But I do think you know, that stuff is worthwhile doing. Right, having that little bit of sort of texture there, for me anyway, just helps it feel a little bit less like these are just sort of big expanses of nothing. So again, same thing here. Right, can we add a little bit of that atmosphere? Now, probably again, it's probably going to be important to separate these ones from the character in the foreground. Let's see if we can. Let's go here, selective color, or just selective color, neutrals. Alright, let's see if we can kind of pull them down in saturation a bit. Alright, a bit cooler. And we'll see if we can push that one up a little bit more. Alright. So now we've got bit of this extra texture around the place. Again, you know, something I think often can work is to put, you know, a bit of that. Oh, that's just putting I was like going to try and pick the pink. I don't think this will work very well, but this can kind of bring everything together in an interesting way. But again, that might be better to do very low. Nah, I think we're good. Yeah, just a bit of texture. So again, you know, we've got these lines here. We could, you know, sort of reduce the opacity of them a little bit. You know, if they do feel a bit sort of strong, right? There might be a few places where that's, you know, feels like it's pushed a little bit too far. Can be hard to say. Something else that's worth playing around with is, again, you know, just add some big sort of atmosphere over the top. That will also bring those down. Now again, this is, you know, this is pushing it away. You know, it's really sort of making it feel like there's a lot of atmosphere there, which may or may not be what you want. What we can play around with next is just basic, you know, color adjustments. You know, can we do something dramatic? Right, like maybe adding, you know, some sort of blue so that pink. Oh yeah, it's gotten big. All right, I just resized it. Yeah, I think it was like 12,000 pixels. Now it's like sort of 8,000. That brings it down file size wise to, yeah, now it's only a gig, whereas it probably was pushing 2 gigs, which is pointless for such a little thing. So again, you know, I like that kind of pink blue thing for this type of, you know, colorful world. I think, again, blue says sky. we're kind of working okay. Again, next thing is sort of, you know, can we push the contrast a little bit more? Now again, it's tricky to know. You can see that, you know, if we do this too much, right? Like if I push those darks down, you're going to start seeing some of those marks that I made before coming online a little bit too much. So this again can be, this is like often a good candidate for, right, kind of figuring out like where do we actually want that sort of extra contrast to be. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's a bit better. Right, it still feels faded. Right, that's kind of cool too. So this is where again we can spend way too much time fiddling around with it. Again, I do genuinely feel like, again, the best solution that I need to keep working on is to kind of just go, you know what, that's cool. You know, that's working okay. Why don't we just take a break, come back, and sort of, you know, see what sort of happens. Just, you know, sort of pulling the contrast away from the background a little bit, playing around with that. You could also, you know, sort of do a basic sort of, you know, vignette style grade, right, where we kind of, oh, there we go, don't want that, right, where we kind of, there we go, right, we sort of bring the, you know, bring things in a little bit. Again, obviously you sort of can pull that out. You know, I often find, you know, when I do that, I kind of work that in, and then, you know, frequently just feels like it looks better when I take it back out. But that can be a good way to just kind of focus in that middle, right? You know, get that going. And again, you know, I always find that, you know, sometimes just doing, you know, sometimes just like overlay, right? Like just sort of pushing, you know, some sort of warm tones in those focal areas can be a good idea. Again, we can always just select the, you know, that kind of middle, and, you know, put some extra sort of contrast there. That can be a good, right? Boom, boom. Is that better? Hard to say. Let's get that back. Let's erase out. Control hide it. Right, get a little bit more. Again, color contrast. I'm mainly just after color contrast because there's not much value contrast here. You know, if you do that classic trick, do the black and white. Oh, I sort of got one of those on, so you can see again it's a very flat image. You know, the reality is that, you know, make sure it works in black and white. That doesn't really function with a line and color image because we're not using a form-based or, you know, a heavy sort of noir lighting, you know, contrasty based image. It's about the vibrancy of the color. The color is going to push and pull the eye. So that's really what we need to figure out. Anyway, I'm just playing around with it. That's probably enough. And the thing is, again, you know, we sort of pushed the, you know, we've pushed the warm, cool color in there. And, you know, now once you sort of do that, what you find is it's always going to be there. You know, we've always got that, you know, the feeling of the cool sort of background versus the bright, colorful character there. And that is quite hard to get rid of, you know. So now we can kind of push it around a little bit more, make it all a little bit warmer, you know, play with that. But anyway, that's, well, let's get these guys back there. Right. That's about it. So yeah, thanks for hanging out and, you know, going through this one with me. Again, we're probably a little bit under an hour here with the, you know, the overall sort of feel. You know, the other things that I would normally do would be my sort of classic, where are we? Put some sort of air particle sort of things in there that might kind of help sell the general idea that, we're flying through the air. I don't know why there's sort of weird air particles everywhere. I do think this just sometimes gives it just a little bit more of a graphic look. Again, it's sort of a stylistic sort of thing, but it does just break things up a little bit, I find. Again, you get a little bit of, painting a few little pink specks everywhere, right? Yeah, just makes it a little bit more interesting. Can see whether making that makes that signature. All right. Sort of red, that might be a cool idea. But yeah, that's it. So about an hour. And the idea is just, you have a thought. What if there were goblin creatures flying through the sky on some weird mix of a whale and a sort of manta ray thing, stingray thing? I don't know. And then, we draw it out and see what it's like. And, if it's cool, we do some more and, keep going, keep ideating, keep creating stuff. I feel like this is a really good sort of, simple technique to use if you're trying to get your line and color style to work more from a visual development standpoint, maybe an animation or something. It's really important to be able to kind of, just create some quick ideas, get them going, see if everyone likes them, and move on from there. If you're interested in any of the techniques that I'm using here, if any of this seems like again, maybe the bits and pieces I'm doing in Photoshop or the general idea is not 100% clear, you want to learn Photoshop, check out my free quick start guide. It goes over all of the techniques and ideas that I, would normally use that maybe I haven't covered in this particular session. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got. Thanks for hanging out. Happy drawing.